How you doing, everybody? My name is Dr. Chris Montanaro. I have a ton of great information to pass along for you today. Our main topic of discussion is how to get out of the chiropractic rat race, and we'll define a little bit more of what that's going to mean in just a little bit. But first off is just some of the value that I want to be able to provide to you today and why sticking through this video is going to be so valuable for you. First off, I've been teaching around the world to chiropractors, medical doctors for years now, and also been taking seminars from some of the best doctors in the world. And I only wish that I had all of that accumulated information over the last 2 decades back when I was in school getting started. I just couldn't imagine having all of that 2 decades worth of an advantage that I'm hopefully going to be able to pass along to you so you can take advantage of a lot of information, avoid some of the pitfalls, and really be able to have the type of practice that you're looking for with the quality of life and the freedom. So that's one major thing. And ultimately having that blueprint of if you follow these steps, you're going to have a practice that you might only dream about in your wildest dreams and have a very successful one, a lot of fun, and help more people with more conditions than you thought even possible. Um, we're going to discuss things that are really the cutting edge of healthcare and a lot of what's not even taught in school. In school, their main job, and they do it well, is to help you pass your board exams and to get you your diploma. And that's their main goal. Once you pass your boards and you get your diploma, their job's done. In the last 2 decades since I've graduated, I haven't had my chiropractic school call me up and say, "How you doing? I want to make sure that you're making millions of dollars and that all your patients are being helped." That's not their job. They fulfilled it. Very grateful that they did. There's no negative there. But we have to understand, what it was that they were there to provide, and then how do we add on top of that so that we do have the practice of our dreams and helping more and more people. Um, we all have on some level that very altruistic view on being able to provide a lot of value to our patients and helping people. I mean, that's why we want to put in that amount of years into our life becoming a doctor, because we want to really help people. But at the same time, we want to make a lot of money too. We've got this idea that doctor equals this really big income. And for a lot of doctors, that's just not the case. And I want to help you avoid some of those pitfalls so that you're not a broke doctor and you're able to be more of a philanthropist and helping more and more people and do it in an abundant way. So we'll be talking about that. So where we can ultimately make millions of dollars in practice and not just scratching by the skin of our teeth and being so burnt out ultimately that you end up quitting practice and doing some other job because you can make more money doing that. Ultimately, absolutely helping a lot of people. And in the end, what I'm going to do, kind of to keep you to the end, yes, we're going to have that little piece here, is I'm going to tell you what I've found over the last 2 decades of working with some of the absolute best doctors in the entire world from every different profession. The single most important technique you'll ever learn that's going to help every single patient that walks in your door. Kind of a big thing to hit, a target to hit here. But I'm not just blowing smoke. I'm literally talking about the single most important technique that's going to help everybody that walks in the door. We're going to cover that too. So stay tuned. We'll get to all of these. First off, what's the first problem? Is we want to make sure that you're not relying on insurance. Most docs think that having an insurance-based model is really the only way that they're able to practice. They've got this belief system that says, patients don't have the money or patients won't pay out of pocket when, you're wanting to charge cash. Like sounding, like you want to charge cash just seems like a really foreign thing. That's just what everybody does. It's the insurance model. You're expected because everybody else is doing it to utilize that insurance-based model. And there's a lot of flaws with that model that we're going to get into that is going to really have a big impact here. But having this idea that patients just don't have the money, people are really good at finding the money for the things that they need or want. When a patient comes in and they're driving a BMW and they don't have $100 to pay for a visit, we might need to take they might need to take a look at some of what their priorities are at that point, especially when they've been to countless numbers of doctors. They've gone through the traditional methods. They're using their insurance and what insurance pays for, and that just creates a lot of issues. So insurance in the chiropractic arena, especially in New York State, what they pay for is an adjustment, more or less. You could do that in 2 or 3 minutes. So the model is actually set up, whether it's intended to be this way or not, is if a chiropractor is going to make money, they're going to maximize those 2 or 3 minute visits. Since that's all they're getting paid for, they're going to supply that 2 or 3 minute visit, adjust people, and literally you'll see chiropractic offices where there's tables lined up and people are lined up on all those tables and adjust, 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 and just kind of have that mill. And again, whether it's intended or not, the insurance model makes it in the doctor's best interest financially to see as many people as possible. So that model is built around what's financially most important and not necessarily on patient results, and it's not necessarily going to be revolving around what's going to be the highest level of quality of office. And when you start building in an office where you're demanding a lot of volume, that also can sometimes add up to a lot of additional headaches. There's a lot of extra overhead that's involved with that, with staffing and billing things that need to take place, all the additional marketing to get that volume of people to come in the office. There's definitely some things to be concerned about with that type of a model. So, but really, truly, the problem isn't the insurance model itself and whether you can follow the insurance model. The real problem is a doctor's lack of clinical skills. If you're graduating from school, you have a certain bucket of skills. Primarily, you can adjust your patient, maybe. That's a whole nother discussion. With your required 250 adjustments, I could just speak to at the college that I went to. You've got to hit your minimum requirement of 250 adjustments. And because of the insurance model being brought into the school, the student's not even allowed to adjust the area of complaint. If they've got a really bad low back problem, the student's not even the one adjusting that. So, how much really hands-on care do you have of the most difficult situations? You're adjusting other areas that are not even in pain. But again, that's a whole nother discussion. So if all you have to offer is one particular tool, adjusting in this case, and you can provide that in 2 to 3 minutes, and you want to charge cash, why would somebody come and see you when they could go to any one of dozens of other chiropractors in the exact same town that are going to do the exact same thing and take their insurance? It just wouldn't make sense. And I'll even tell patients that if what you're looking for is only what your insurance company is going to cover, well, that's something that you can get in 2 to 3 minutes. And there's a dozen other chiropractors in town. I'll refer you if that's what you're looking for. But usually that's not what you're looking for by the time you get to my office, because you've already been to multiple chiropractors, a lot of times several medical doctors and other healthcare providers, and you haven't gotten the results that you're looking for. You're looking for another level, going from, I don't want to make this sound in a negative way, but more on the average standard of care amateur ranks to a superior, higher level professional level and expertise and clinical skills, and really taking that to the next level. And being able to take that to the next level also dictates that you're going to be spending more time with a patient, but you're also going to be creating tremendous results, and people will pay for that, which gets really exciting and helps break that mold of not having to be in that insurance model. And to make things worse, so what does it take to get 500 patients in a week? I had actually one chiropractor local to where I live also started a practice management group, and he sent out an email and he says, I want to teach you how you can see 500 patients a day like we do in my office. I'm like, 500, I did the math, 500 patients a day, and we're talking like 20-something seconds per patient. And I don't know on what earth 20 seconds, why you went to school for 15 plus years to get a license as a doctor, be able to help people, and then spend 20-something seconds with somebody. I can't do that math. That doesn't make sense to me whatsoever. I actually think that's a travesty. Um, but again, that's a whole nother discussion. But in that insurance model, let's say you are going to see 2 or 3, 4, 500 patients in a week. What's that going to take to acquire those patients, get them to stick around for, that really short visit time, and, sometimes not getting the results that they're looking for. That model a lot of times dictates working 16 hours a day. 5 of that is doing paperwork and running a business and marketing and all that behind the scenes stuff. It becomes this big, huge production. When you think of the freedom, I can do whatever I want. I can go see my kid's basketball game. I can travel. I can do all these things. Well, running an office like that gets bigger and bigger and more complex, it becomes a 24/7 job a lot of times. And that's just not from me speaking. This is listening to doctors from all over the world talking about what it's like in their offices when they run them that way. And, they're burnt out, and it can be really frustrating. And when you're in that insurance model, 25% you can take off the top of what you're going to bring home between having extra billing staff, having claims that you're sending in, and then they reject them, and you're sending it in again and reject them. And, sometimes, just not to pick on Medicare, but sometimes you're fighting back and forth. You dot this I, you cross this T, and they reject it, and you're fighting again for $5. And you've just spent several hours worth of your time or your office staff's time on the phone with paperwork trying to collect $5. And the return on that just doesn't even make sense. It's almost, laughable when you think about the kind of time that's involved with doing that. You do the math, trying to get that 5 minutes and the hours that it takes to do that, and now you want to pay off $200,000 in school loans. You'll need roughly 40,000 patient visits to collect your $5 copay that you're holding on so tightly to be able to get that $5. And, the kind of numbers are just astronomical to actually make a real living, have a freedom in your practice, and enjoy and have an abundance with your practice, and not just kind of living by the skin of your teeth. And ultimately, you have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. You're working harder and harder and harder. And, as your income is increasing, at the same time, your level of being burnt out is just making things more and more difficult for you as well. So definitely some things to consider with that. One example was a doctor taking my course several years ago. And this doctor came up to me a few sessions in, and he says, Chris, he, almost in tears, he said, I've been in practice for the last 25 years, and I've had this insurance-based model, and I was ready to walk away completely. I'm burnt out. I can't deal with it anymore. I would have done anything else. Go pick up garbage. It didn't matter. He was so burnt out from that model. And he says he's taken this course. He's learning new things, spending more time with people, charging them what he's worth because he's getting people better. And he's enjoying practice all over again and absolutely loving it, which is what we want. We want to go to the office passionate and psyched up and absolutely having a blast because we're helping everybody. There's nothing more fulfilling as a doctor when you get a patient that comes in who's been to dozens of other doctors and you were the one to help them when nobody else could. And at the same time, you got paid a ton of money to do it. That's awesome. It's really exciting when that happens. And I have doctor after doctor after doctor expressing their gratitude when they start implementing a lot of the things that we teach. So the solution is, what if your clinical skills literally dwarfed your competition in town? All right. What if it dwarfed it? I'm talking about taking your clinical competence to a level of expertise that you're able to help the most difficult patients that no other doctors were able to. All right. And that also demands that people pay you for the time that you're going to spend. And you don't have to deal with the rat race of the insurance companies and the really super high volume. You could have more quality of time with your patients and develop relationships that are fun. Get invited to their birthdays and their weddings, and have that really amazing atmosphere with some amazing relationships that you have with these people and change their lives and change their family lives and create an amazing ripple effect on that level. Okay. Sometimes I'll use a couple of different analogies when you talk about charging what you're worth and having a certain level of expertise. That means people are going to pay it because there's nowhere else to get the result. If you've got major car problems, your engine's completely shot, you need to rebuild the thing, and you don't have the money for a brand new car, then, you're going to take it to your mechanic, and we don't have car insurance in the sense that it's going to pay for your car bills. You have car insurance in case you have a major accident. And in this case, the mechanic says it's going to cost XYZ, $1,500, $3,000. What choice do you have? You still have to get to work. You've got to take your kids back and forth from wherever. You've got to get groceries. You got to live your life. These days, unless you live in a major metropolitan area, getting along without your car is going to be a major issue for you. So you pay it because they're going to get you the result that you need and do it relatively quickly. It's not, oh, well, is he going to accept some other form of, insurance? Same thing holds true. Your heater goes in your house, especially if you live in upstate New York in the middle of the winter. How much time do you have to get that fixed? And, do you have special heater insurance to be able to, buy that? Most likely not. And, you get the bill and you're like, well, I need heat. I got to make sure that my kids can stay warm at night and make sure that the house doesn't freeze over and the pipes burst and create even more problems. So one way or another, you figure it out. It goes on a credit card. You borrow from this. You take care of what you need to. People figure out a way when they need the result. And you've got the expertise, in this case, the person who does your HVAC work or your car mechanic or just about any other profession. When you really need a certain level of expertise, you're going to pay for that level of expertise. Why should that be any different with a doctor who has, sometimes 10, 15, 20 years of education and clinical skill? And let's say that you take somebody that may have had a $15,000 or $20,000 knee surgery, and they don't have to go through that knee surgery, and you fixed it. What is that worth? Is that worth a $5 copay, or is that worth several thousands of dollars because you were able to help something save them the quality of life and the recovery and the major surgery and everything that's involved with that, and really truly charging what you're worth? And that's a really important thing. So ultimately, again, focused on having that clinical expertise that nobody else in town really has, holding yourself to a higher standard. And, I think that brings up our second major point here, is getting out of the rat race, is basically having multiple streams of income. The statistics actually show that the average millionaire has 7 or more different streams of income coming in. And those are average statistics. So a chiropractor going in and they've got their adjustment that they're going to do with their insurance-based model, providing the standard of care in the chiropractic office. There's one stream of income that they have, and if that tool doesn't work, there's nothing else to fall back on, and that has some of its issues. And that brings up the standard of care in the first place. What is the standard of care? It's almost turned into the bare minimum that you can kind of get by. The standard of care a lot of times is you're going to get a 2-minute visit with a doctor, whether it's a chiropractor or a medical doctor. You're in there for a very short period of time. Sometimes you're waiting in a waiting room for a half hour, 45 minutes, hour and a half. Your symptoms are kind of managed, but nothing's actually even fixed in the first place. If we're holding ourselves to the standard of care that's in our healthcare field right now, then I'm arguing that that's a pretty substandard thing to be holding ourselves to. This big, amazing, righteous standard of care is nothing close to that high level of care that you would want for yourself and you would want for your families. And that's what I want us to be able to do, is hold ourselves to a much, much higher standard, and to have a level of expertise. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. And then we can have multiple streams of income because we have more than just one particular tool. And, you know, I could call it the hammer and the nail syndrome. You've probably heard this analogy before. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And, you know, the problem is several things when all you have is a hammer or an adjustment or a prescription pad or acupuncture needles or nutrition. You know, each person, you know, medical doctors got their drugs and surgery. The chiropractor has their adjustment. The acupuncturist has needles that they can stick in you. The nutritionist can give you supplements. They each have their one tool. And the problem is, for one, at some point, they can get kind of boring just doing the same old thing every single day, all day long. Another issue is if you've got a patient with something pretty serious going on, which we'll talk about some examples a little bit later, and you just keep trying your hammer over and over and over again, that's not going to help every single patient that walks in your door. You know, as amazing as some of the techniques are that are out there, drugs can save people's lives, especially in the emergency realm. One of the best examples of how important drugs can be. You know, adjustments have absolutely saved lives and made major changes in people's health. Acupuncture has been around for 5,000 years. It's withstood the test of time. You know, we've got amazing results over the last 5,000 years with acupuncture. Nutritional things can absolutely have their benefit, but not any one of them individually helps everybody, especially the way that that technique that I'm going to talk about at the end, as far as the number one technique that can help every single person that walks in your door. That's something you still want to stick around for, and it'll be really worth your while there. But ultimately, if you've got the hammer and nail syndrome, you're going to get burnout, and you're going to leave a lot of your clinical capability on the table. You're going to leave a lot of patients continuing to suffer for years on end that aren't getting the results that they need. And, you know, they're not just numbers. They're our families, our friends, and our loved ones that need that help. So important to, you know, think about. Great tool, great quote to consider is you know, really popular in the business world. It says, the number one job of an entrepreneur is to protect their self-esteem. Think about that for a minute. Protecting your self-esteem. Obviously, if an entrepreneur's self-esteem is shot, you've got confidence issues, that's going to have its negative impact on your income stream and your ability to deliver your service. And if your results with patients are substandard, that's going to have a huge impact on your self-esteem. If you're not making enough money because you're in this insurance model and you can't get enough patients to make it financially worthwhile to you and the kind of lifestyle that you want to live, that can have some pretty big impacts on your self-esteem as well. So, you know, keep that in mind a little bit as we're continuing on here. The real problem is a poverty complex. And the healthcare industry, especially on the more natural, holistic healthcare practitioners, are loaded with this idea of the poverty complex. They tend to look at things in the sense that everything has an expense, everything has a cost to it. You know, if they were going to get or see, you know, like, you should buy this $3,000 MacBook Pro. You're like, $3,000? I could buy another laptop for $300 at Best Buy. Well, yes, it's possible, and, you know, that may or may not serve your purposes, but they look at it as a $3,000 cost, not with this $3,000 laptop. I'm going to produce all of my seminars, all of my website-related stuff. I'm going to have all my connection with my patients, and this laptop will make me millions of dollars. So now when you think about it, spending $3,000 and it's going to make you millions, it's like, well, now it's an investment and it's a good idea. Before, it's $3,000 going out the door, it's a cost, and you're not getting anything in return. So, you know, that tends to be that poverty complex that a lot of holistic practitioners have. And then they transfer it over to the patient. It's like, well, I don't have the money. I'm in school. You know, I'm broke. And they take that into being a doctor in practice. And then they think, well, patients must be broke too. They don't have money. So I'm going to start giving my care away. I'll do this, and not get paid for it, or I'll just accept this little bit. When you have that poverty complex, ultimately, you're not serving at the highest level that you could be. There's always this balance and reciprocity when it comes to an energy exchange. And if all you do is treat people and get nothing for it, unless it's a specific charitable purpose under certain circumstances, if you have a negative energy exchange and you're not getting what you're worth for that, then you'll find out very quickly that the patient actually, their results will not be as good as if they actually paid for their services and had a proper exchange. It's a really wild dynamic that takes place. If you don't believe me, try it yourself, or go into other doctors' offices and see it working in real life situation there. So again, looking at what things cost. And, it makes sense. Not everybody grew up in an entrepreneurial family and with millions and millions of dollars at their disposal between what their parents made and what they have in their family. That's not the average way that people grow up. And, sometimes they're used to struggling a little bit with money. My parents had okay incomes. They both had their salaries that they made in their particular jobs. But then you get this idea, it's like, okay, I'm doing this job, I get this salary, which means I have limited resources that I have to spread, and I have to decide where I'm going to do that. And it's already building this idea that there are limits. There are limited resources to be had in the first place, which when you're trying to bring that into business in the entrepreneurial world, if you already have a ceiling, that's going to create some major problems. And really building into that idea of a poverty complex, it's not going to ultimately help you to help the most number of patients. Goal number one. Goal number two is to live the lifestyle and actually make some real money. This is our profession. This isn't a hobby or our charitable contribution to the world, although we're providing some great good to the world. This is our profession with which we need to support ourselves, our family, and our lifestyle. And if we can't get past the fact that we need to make a real solid living doing that, then do that on the side, but get a job that can make you a really significant income, and then, do some charitable work. That's fine. But however you need to work that, we need to make sure that if you are going to continue through and be the healthcare provider that you want to, that you can make a very solid, 6, 7, 8-figure type of an income, so that you're living life to the fullest and actually having a much bigger impact than you ever could with this, little in the box poverty mindset that so many doctors do have. Important concept: success leaves clues. And this is one of the major concepts that is taught by Tony Robbins. If you don't know who Tony Robbins is, he's one of the leading success business coaches in the entire world, not just business, in life in general. And, one of his major concepts has always been total immersion. If you're trying to learn something, go find the best of the best so that you can see what it is that they're doing. Find out the roadblocks that they got through, how they got through them, so that you can cut through potentially decades, like we talked about at the beginning, cut through decades of heartache, problems, wasting money, not being very efficient, and get right to the heart of getting the best results that you possibly can. That's essentially one of the major concepts that he teaches. So I loved what he had to teach. He's charismatic, he's on fire, and helped some of the most prolific people in the world today. So that's a good formula. I liked that formula, and it works for a lot of people. So I did the same thing. And you come across Dr. Goodhart, who is the founder of Applied Kinesiology. And he basically did the exact same thing. He went and studied from the best of the best doctors in the entire world. He was one of the first doctors allowed into China and immersed himself in acupuncture, brought that back. He, knew and rubbed shoulders with the best people in the world of nutrition and biochemists and anatomists and PhDs, MDs, DOs, you name it. He knew the best of all of them, and actually kind of gathered a lot of their best clinical pros and put it together, and able to now cut through decades and decades of, you couldn't possibly learn and become a PhD or an MD or a DO times every single one of those learning professions, healthcare professions out there. But when you can learn the best of the best that each one has to offer, really profound impact, and again, saving decades of time. I wish that knew all that I knew now back starting in chiropractic school or even earlier, to really speed up the process of getting the highest level of successes that you ultimately want to. So I followed suit and studied everything that Dr. Goodhart put out, and taught within applied kinesiology, and took it a step further. I spent probably an extra $50,000 in neurology courses with several of the different areas that you can study neurology from. Yeah, probably between certifications and recertifications, an active release technique, and dozens upon dozens of nutrition seminars, and getting my diploma in nutrition as well. Other soft tissue techniques, practice management and practice management seminars. You could get lost in a maze of tens of thousands of dollars spent in there. The world of marketing and SEO, search engine optimization, all the online marketing side of things. Between a buddy and myself that kind of, split costs, we easily spent over $100,000 learning from the best of the best in the world when it comes to making money online and dealing with that online world. Literally, people making millions of dollars a month doing this stuff, and the tips and tricks and amazing information that they utilize to make that kind of money. And the list just goes on and on and on, accumulating all of that. And guess what? You benefit because of the accumulation of information, and now being able to present that in a way that you can cut down decades worth of time and tens of thousands of dollars over the course of your lifetime, trying to accumulate that in bits and pieces. As a result, the benefit of all those years and all that time and money spent traveling to seminars, all the money that's involved with it, time away from family, and you accumulate all. What is that actually worth? And the benefit you get from that accumulated mass of knowledge that isn't all my knowledge, it's knowledge that's coming from so many of the healing disciplines, just like Dr. Goodhart, and stepping on his shoulders and adding so much more to that. Number 3, as far as getting out of the chiropractic rat race, is let's get paid today. You're never going to see a scenario where you go get your car fixed for $2,000, you drive it around for 3 months, and then the mechanic gets paid 3 months later. It's almost ridiculous to think about with 99.9% of other professions out there. You provide a service, you either got paid in advance or you get paid upon delivery. And, we get this idea that for whatever reason, we're going to provide a service, and then you get paid at some point. And if they reject it, that point gets put out further. And if they reject it, they're hoping that you just forget about it or get too frustrated. You've invested too much time, and you just, whatever. It was only $5 or $10 anyway. It's not worth my time. So the concept to get out of the rat race is, let's get paid today. Cash. When I treat all day long, that money is now in my hands or in my bank account right then and there. It's a really awesome feeling when you can walk away at the end of the day and that money is there, and not wondering or hoping that you're going to get paid in the first place. Or you see this list of, well, someday I'm going to get paid $10,000, $30,000, $50,000, $60,000. I've seen doctors' offices in the past that have had, oh, I'm owed like $175,000 right now. Probably might end up seeing half of that money, or if I continue to follow up with it. And there's a lot of mights and hopes and things of that nature. That's a lot of money to be leaving on the table. And, I can get paid every single day. And if they don't pay, then I'm not going to be treating that patient. I'm not going to create that negative energy exchange. And, that's not what's best for the patient ultimately. That's not what's best for me being able to deliver that highest level of care continuing to advance that clinical expertise, be able to spend the kind of time that patients are demanding and needing to get the results that they're looking for. Um, and it really makes practice so much more fun. Um, why is it done that way? Why do we, it's everybody else is doing it. It's that sheep mentality. You're just kind of going with the herd. Well, everybody's taking insurance. You have to do it that way. Um, I would argue that that's not the case. Just because a lot of people are doing it, and a lot of people are doing it very unsuccessfully, when do we put a scratch in that record and try the new thing and be open and outside of the box thinking that there is a better way to be able to do that, and that we're more capable than we realize. A great example that you hear all the time was Roger Bannister with the 4-minute mile. They said it could never be done, can't be done, can't be done. And as soon as Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, now I don't even know the number, but you've got hundreds of people who have done it since then. Once you break through a barrier, and now people realize, oh, it is possible. It is possible to make $100,000 a month cash in your office and work 3 days a week doing it. It's possible to do that. Thinking outside the box. Hopefully that just blew a fuse and like, are you kidding me? No, I'm not kidding you. There are many doctors that are following the principles that we teach that are literally making $100,000 or more a month in cash and getting paid in advance for their care, getting paid in a way that they're not waiting for 3 months and hoping for their insurance company to do it. And that's so much more fun of a way to practice, I promise. So one of the problems is, like we talked about, you're losing out on revenue. We talked about how you're fighting in Medicare for a $5 copay that the patient's, insurance, the Medicare is going to cover, and needing 40,000 patient visits with Medicare to, make the kind of money that you'd actually be able to pay off your school loans. Again, it's kind of laughable when you think of 40,000 patient visits to actually be able to pay off your school loans as a result of dealing with those kind of copays. Hopefully that paints a picture that there's a brighter light at the end of a different tunnel for you to consider. And the real problem ultimately is you don't know what you don't know. That creates a big issue for a lot of people. Take some examples here of some docs that are applied kinesiology docs who have really taken their clinical expertise to the highest level. The Kansas, there's an AK doc that is the head chiropractor for the Kansas City Chiefs. Same thing, another diplomate in applied kinesiology is the chiropractor for the New England Patriots. And before working with the New England Patriots, was the head chiropractor for Team Milan in Italy in soccer. Working with multi-billion-dollar industry companies where Pepsi and ACCO, and working with these big multi-billion-dollar companies, it's not I'm going to provide this service and then we'll wait for some insurance company. No, they realize the kind of value and the amount of money that they're saving, and get a check. You get paid for the services rendered and not hoping and wondering what's going on with the insurance companies. I've got my picture with them in the office. There's not really any big deal as far as, patient confidentiality, but, there's not a lot of professional sports teams in the Syracuse area, but Syracuse basketball is definitely one of the big sports, one of the, more highlighted sports. And, there's times when we're making a run at the national championship and getting towards the end of the season. Jeremy Grant, the trainers weren't helping him. His back was really hurting, ended up in the office and, be able to help quite a bit. And, that's really fun, both from working on somebody who ends up, going into the NBA and, at a very high level, but also helping your hometown basketball team, win some basketball games. A lot of fun. But do you think in those scenarios that you're just waiting around for the insurance to pay for those things? Absolutely not. When you're able to deliver the goods and get the result, people will pay for those results. Okay? You're not doing anything unmoral and unethical when you're providing a result that no other doctors are able to provide, and you're getting paid for it. Very exciting. So docs, they go to school. I'll sympathize with you. All of us go to school ultimately with the idea that we want to help people. But once they graduate, ultimately they're working long hours. They're spending more time calling insurance companies than actually spending time treating patients. You're spending 3 minutes with a patient. They're ultimately feeling very unfulfilled. They're not getting the results that they're looking for. They're getting paid less and less of what they're worth, all while their debt is still building up over and over and over again. Not only their school debt, but now you've got a car to pay for, and malpractice insurance, and food, and your rent, and maybe your office rent, and it continues to kind of snowball, and that can get pretty scary very quickly if you're not prepared for it. And we'll continue on. There's some other great information to look at. So from ultimately taking a lesson from Tony Robbins, from Dr. Goodhart, putting together this certification seminar series, and ultimately giving you the freedom and the quality of life right from the very beginning, even while you're in school, building the office of your dreams, building an audience and a patient base even before you graduate, and taking advantage of multiple revenue streams and building that clinical knowledge, not just passing test questions, because that's what school prepares you for, but actually the sickest of the sick and the most injured patients that are walking in your door, having the confidence like, oh yeah, we'll fix that. I don't know if it's going to be today or it's going to take a couple of visits, but yeah, let's go to work. If I don't get an improvement in 2 visits, then something's wrong. And I'll tell you, if I can't get a visit or a response in 2 visits, then I'll give you your money back. Maybe this is going to be a whole lot more of something surgical at that point. Point being, I've never had to actually give somebody their money back and not get any results within a 2-visit period of time, versus the traditional standard of care 3 times a week for 3 months, keep doing the same thing for 2 minutes every single time somebody's in the office, and maybe getting results, maybe not. Kind of call that the pop and pray method. You hope that the adjustment's going to create this amazing response at some point when you keep doing the same thing over and over again and hoping to get a different response and actually get the response where you're going to get a result. Hopefully you've heard that definition of insanity, trying to keep doing the same thing over and over again, which brings up a good point that learning the number one technique that you could use to help every single patient that walks in your door, stay in tune, because it's coming. All right. With the course itself, we're looking at, taking 8 months out of your life. It's 1 weekend, and the New York version, the live course, it's 8 different months that we're doing this, 8 sessions. So just on a Saturday, super long day. We're going to be there 10 to 12 hours, and no fluff involved. I mean, we hit it hard with super focused, clinically relevant information that you can apply the next day. In the Florida version of the course, we're going to do back-to-back Saturday and Sunday. So there's 4 different months to go through the entire course there. So that's a little. We're going to get into more of the outline of the actual course itself. But taking a look at the ripple effect and the number of lives that are impacted from something like that. Not only the hundreds and hundreds of doctors that I've taught over the years, but now their patients and those patients' families, and the ripple effect and the number of people that helps can be pretty significant and a lot of fun to be a part of, for sure. So details about the course itself now. Session 1, I call Stop Your Pain Now. Kind of gives you an idea of some of the overtones of what the session's going to be about. There are multiple techniques that are going to be involved with getting somebody out of pain. Not in 3 months, not 3 times a week for the next 6 months or a year, or years and years and years. It's how do we get somebody's pain level down significantly today? We want a result as quickly as possible. How can we do that? And there's several different techniques that are involved with it. And we start getting into an understanding that when somebody's in pain, you're also driving a lot of other problems in the body with the sympathetic nervous system. When you're in pain, you're in more of a fight or flight mode. And when you're in fight or flight mode, what things aren't working? Fight or flight means you're running from a tiger versus the parasympathetic side of the nervous system, where is rest and recuperation and healing and digestion. So when you're in pain, in sympathetic dominance, that means your ability to heal, your ability to digest is going to be inhibited, your healing capacity. So they come in with needing healing and their body's in a state that's not going to heal very well. They're having digestive issues, but they're in pain all the time. Driving sympathetics, by definition, means you're shutting down their ability to digest very well. So we start seeing these correlations and taking information that we learn in school and applying it in the treatment room. I'm going to give you one very, very tiny detail just to give a little bit of an explanation of what that might look like. In school, in gross anatomy, you're going to get one slide, maybe one test question that covers this piece of information on your boards, never talked about again, and it can be one of the most profound neurological afferent information coming into the body for the processing that takes place for all of the other output, mechanical output, visceral and endocrine output that's going to take place as a result. And it's given one slide in all of chiropractic school, medical school, and never talked about again from an application standpoint. Okay, this is an example of what book teaching will do for you to pass a test versus now actually using that information for something that's going to give a real true world clinical result. So you get, let's say, a muscle here, okay? Now we have things known as spindle cells. Right? Spindle cells are concentrated in the muscle belly. And you've got Golgi tendon organs concentrated at the musculotendinous junctions. Spindle cells respond to stretch. All right? How they work is if you stretch a muscle, stretch, it's going to create a reflex that's going to cause a contraction, which is why when somebody's calf starts cramping really, really bad, the first thing that people think that they're going to do, oh, it's spasming, let me stretch it. By definition, stretching spindle cells is actually going to cause more contraction. If you have a spasming muscle and it's contracted and holding on as tight as it possibly can, the last thing you want to do is add more stretch to it and cause more facilitation and contraction of spindle cells. What you want to do in this case is to take the stretch away and actually go into and shorten the muscle belly that much more, release all the spindle cells, and turn that mechanism off. Now, that's just one tiny instance, and we could spend an hour talking about all the ways that these can be manipulated and the effects that they can have on the body. But again, this is just one very, very small example of taking clinical book knowledge that means nothing to you clinically and actually turn it into something that we can actually apply and help people, whether we're trying to get a muscle to function, work better, or it's spasming, we need some relief, and let's bring that back down to a more calm level, and we'll deal with it when the patient's a whole lot more comfortable. Again, one out of tens of thousands of clinical things that we're going to be able to apply and make big differences with people. In session one, we're going to talk about something called the triad of health. All right. The triad of health, picture now your triangle here. On the bottom, the base, we're going to have the more physical, all right, the structural side of things. It's what you typically think of with a chiropractor. Hands-on, very physical, muscles, bones, joints, things of that nature. And this is the only thing that a lot of chiropractors will even focus on. Then we have the physiological, all right? Physiological, this is where we're talking about the biochemistry of the body, all right? Whether we're using nutrition, we're using drugs to manipulate the chemistry of the body, or hormones. So we're looking at the physiology, the physical, and then the psychology. All right? I like to write it that way. P3, I got your 3 Ps that bring everything all together. And I would suggest that to get the highest result with a patient, you ultimately need to focus on, one way or another, all 3 components of the triad of health to get the biggest and the best result. Whether you're going to provide that for the patient or not, to get the ultimate outcome, especially with the most difficult of patients, if you want to bring them to the highest level of health that they can and not just mask a few symptoms, this is a process that we really need to spend a lot of time on. And the coursework dives into depth in all of these different areas here. Very important concepts to understand there. We're going to start the process of diving into clinical nutrition, where you're not just learning, again, test questions to answer some nutrition courses. You know, what is vitamin B12 called? What is vitamin C called? No, this is, patient comes in with this type of a condition. One, how do I assess what they need, and how do I get it to them, deliver it properly, and make sure that they're going to get the result, not just masking the symptom, but actually improving their health, dealing with it, resolution of the problems that they're coming in with. We're going to start diving into deep into session 1 and continue throughout all 8 sessions, actually. We're going to get into an advanced level of muscle testing, not only muscle testing all of the muscles in the body, but each and every division, so we can find out, especially from that physical component, exactly what's working and what's not working, and be able to address those things. We're going to get into concepts known as the 5 factors. Without going into depth right now, think of, from a muscular standpoint or a function standpoint, that everything has like 5 fuses. If you are in your kitchen and you've got your blender and the blender stops working, you're like, oh great, the fuse went out, it blew. You know, how long do you wait in the kitchen before the blender starts working again? You could wait there 100,000 years. It's not coming back on until you go downstairs, you flip the circuit breaker, and now it's functioning again. And there's 5 major circuit breakers for all of our major pathways and musculature in the body that we need to flip those 5 circuits, if you will, to get them firing and fully functioning the way that we need to. So we're going to discuss all of those. And just from a example standpoint, as far as getting people out of pain quickly and just what that can do. I had a patient that came in one time. She was the wife of a chiropractor in town, and you know, first off, that's kind of interesting. It's like, your husband is a chiropractor. He should be able to fix whatever it is that you're dealing with. Anyway, she came into the office, get the history. She was in a major car accident, shattered her ankle, tons of metal sticking all over the place, pins, and trying to piece things together. Long story short, 13 years after the accident, she is still in so much pain that she has already scheduled a consult to surgically have her ankle amputated because she's in so much pain. That's a big decision to make if you're going to start cutting off limbs. Anyway, she comes into the office. I treat her with some very basic things, a lot of which I learned just in session 1 alone. And 6 months later, I don't hear anything from her. 6 months later, I get a phone call. Hey, Dr. Chris, this is so-and-so. I apologize, I lost touch. We moved, life got hectic, things were crazy. But I'm back in town. I've been feeling amazing since you worked on me. And, you know, I was wondering if you can squeeze me in. I'm like, hold on a second. Time out. Let's recap for a second. You were going to cut off your ankle, cut off your foot at the ankle because you were in so much pain. And one visit, you felt better over the last 6 months, and everything is all hunky-dory. We're doing, yeah, everything feels great. Brings up a couple of different things. One is just how profound these things work. We're not talking about every once in a while you say the perfect prayer and and miracles happen. This is consistent and reproducible results where you can have major effects, in this case in pain, but in all different aspects of healthcare that you're providing. And it brings up another really sad point, is that a colleague of mine, another chiropractor, who should have a higher standard of care capability, a higher level of expertise, for whatever reason, didn't, was not able to help his wife, and ultimately, if I hadn't, she very likely would have had her foot amputated. What does that mean? Does that sit okay to know that there is information out there that you can have that kind of an effect on somebody and not learn what that is? For me, the answer is absolutely not. If there's information out there to be had that I can help the next most difficult patient that's coming in my door, then there is almost no price tag that counteracts me doing that, because that's just my belief system, and I'll do anything and everything that I can to help the patient who needs help when every other part of the standard of care healthcare system wasn't able to deliver what the patient needed at that time. I'll travel just about anywhere. I'll study from any doctors, any resources, to be able to find something that's actually going to be able to help in that case. So, just one simple example of a session 1 scenario. Session 2, I love my movie quotes, Back to the Future. So, just built in the name of session 2 is Back to the Future. We're going to look at some pretty futuristic things. We're also going to be looking at the back in a lot of the different stuff. So when you're in chiropractic school, this is kind of our bread and butter that you're taught, dealing with necks and backs. Sometimes the complexity level of a patient gets higher and higher. And every once in a while, when somebody comes in with some low back pain, facet imbrication, piriformis syndrome, sciatica, disc problem, it's almost like, oh, whew, not that I'm going to, lower my standard and not give the highest level of care, but it's almost like, oh, it's a little bit easier one for a change. Where some doctors are like, oh my God, another disc patient. I hope that we could do something to help this person. It's taking the hope out of practice. It's like, oh, I've seen this, I've done it, I know exactly what to do. So that makes it pretty fun. So that being said, just a great story that goes along with session 2 is that I had an OBGYN who missed session 1, came to session 2, never met this doctor before, and a little frustrating because it was one of my first medical doctors taking the course, and there's so much to be had, and now they tend to stereotype chiropractors as, well, you treat necks and backs, and this is the seminar that she's going to get, is about backs in this case. So if I could have picked any other session, I probably would have wanted to pick another session for her, but that's where she came in. And a couple of really interesting things came from that. First was, just as a surgeon and, the clinical knowledge that had, when you're cutting people open for a living, we're going through some very basic anatomy, dealing with some of the muscles and muscle testing in and around the low back. And she kind of whispers to me, she's like, I need to study some of these muscles. I haven't looked at this in a long time. I don't remember half of this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, you're a surgeon. You cut people open for a living, and we're not even talking like a toe surgeon and a brain surgeon. We're talking an area that's a few inches away from where we're talking about that she spends all day long, and she didn't even know all that anatomy. And I'm thinking, that brings up again the standard of care and that higher level of expertise. Anyway, I don't want to talk too negatively, but what was really interesting, and the point of the story, is that she thought so much of my clinical expertise teaching this information about the low back. She was able to make the correlation and said, I'm going to refer Dr. Chris a patient. And this particular patient, the first patient that she refers me, is a patient that she's been trying to deal with for the last 2 years. She had tremendous 10 out of 10 vaginal pain. discharge, severe pain, and used just about every antibiotic and corticosteroid cream that she had in her arsenal and couldn't help. And as you could imagine, as a married female in that particular scenario, when you're having that kind of pain, that your relationship with your spouse intimately is non-existent, and there's implications there. There's the implications of what discharge and that kind of pain and the quality of life that somebody is going to have as a result of that. And this is the first patient that this OBGYN refers me as a result of a back seminar that, more than that, but the seminar itself and the day that she was at. Interesting. And we're going to talk more about that particular case when we get to session 8 information. We'll add on top of that story. But just to kind of give you an idea of the level of information that we're covering in these different sessions and how impressive it is even to, very high-level medical surgeons. It's very impressive with the information that's being taught. Session 3, called Brain on Fire. We're doing a lot of neurology. We're doing a lot of cranial sacral mechanism type of work. We're looking at functional neurology and hemisphericity models of how the right and the left brain are working synchronously with each other. Do you have a deficit on one side versus the other? How do you know? How do you test? And how do you treat the side of the brain that needs the most stimulation? Not just the side, but very pinpointed specific areas in the brain that you actually want to have your focus and attention on. Again, you could go spend $50,000 to $100,000 through functional neurology courses and try to accumulate all that. We're going to condense down some of the best information for you. Really spread over the 8 sessions, but very focused in session 3 with the Brain on Fire. Great example of this particular a case of a patient from this particular session. Patient came in, 13-year-old boy, had the complaint that was come in with, it was just, sore in school, neck and back kind of hurt. So treat what I find, fix what I fix, and kind of at a fault to me, didn't dive as deep as I should have in the history and consultation. They came in with a specific problem. We focused on it. We fixed it. Everything was good. But what was really interesting was a day or two later, I get this phone call from his ophthalmologist and says, you're treating one of my patients, so-and-so. What'd you do with my patient? And I'm like, oh, crap, what did I do? He's like, no, you don't understand. Me and 2 other neuro-ophthalmologists have been working with this kid for years, and he's had some of the worst eyesight that, and he's talking about all these diopters and all these different tests that I honestly didn't know at the time. And, he said, this kid's vision is 20/200 when we're testing him in the office. It's been this way for a really long time. And he comes in to, the office. We do some tests. And, all of a sudden he's at 20/20 vision. He's like, that just doesn't happen. And they told us that he went and saw you, and that's the only difference and change that had taken place. Feeling pretty good about myself at that point. And he's like, well, what did you do? Like, well, I can't really teach the last 20 years of my life and, a phone call for you. But, we developed a relationship, and, he started, down the path of increasing his clinical expertise and knowledge. But fascinating when you go from the pop and pray method, just whatever my insurance company is going to accept, to sometimes you fixing things on somebody and having such a profound impact you didn't even realize that you're fixing some of the things necessarily that were underlying that you didn't even know about in that particular case. So phenomenal session, one of my favorites. Some of the things in that sessions have created some of the most profound impacts and results with patients for sure. Session 4, kicking it up a notch, giving it a little bit of that reference towards the lower extremities. So definitely a lot of things from the waist down. Everything from toe problems, foot and ankle problems, knee and hip, shin splints, pretty basic structural type things, but sometimes there's a lot more depth of the problem going on there. You take your average, let's say a plantar fasciitis. The average stereotypical doctor out there, medical doctor, chiropractor, is like, well, sometimes that's just wait it out. It'll take a year to get back, before you're able to run again. If you've got a triathlete or a marathon runner and you're telling them that they need to take a year off, it's not going to happen. They need some results a whole lot quicker than a year. And, some of that stuff is pretty easy to clear up very, very quickly. Give you a great example. One of my favorite examples is a woman that I actually, somewhere along with this video, whether it's attached to it, on the same web page, clickable, some way or another, you'll actually be able to see the video testimonial of Barb. And great story. So she comes into the office, and she's the receptionist, office manager of another chiropractor in town. And she is an ultra distance runner, happened to be on her bike, had a bike crash really bad, messed up her knee horribly, and goes to an orthopedic surgeon. Orthopedic surgeon says that you need a complete knee reconstruction, and it'll be at least 8 months before you even think about jogging again, which is devastating to anybody, especially somebody that has an incredibly active and fit lifestyle. And long story short, treat her a few times. And then a month later, after seeing her without surgery, she ran a marathon, which was one of her major goals that she had been building towards in the first place. And she was told by the standard of care orthopedic surgeon, you need a complete knee reconstruction. There's no other choice. And be able to not only get through that not having surgery for her knee then, and not just kind of like faking it through a marathon, however you could fake it through a marathon. But to this date, her knee is amazing. She's doing, some of the, Xterra type races and the obstacle course races, and she's, just really pushing her body to her limit in every way, and her knee is just as strong as she needs to be able to get through any of that at a very high level. So, super exciting for a result like that. But to sweeten that just a little bit, this happened literally in my first few months of practice. Still having a lot of that poverty complex. I can't afford an office manager or a receptionist. Can't afford this, can't afford that. But I did have 3 years worth of applied kinesiology study and tons of additional seminars, even while I was in school. So I'd say that I had, coming out of school, had a very far above average clinical knowledge base, and made an amazing result, obviously. So what she did next was actually one of the most profound things that have ever happened to me, is she quit her job at the chiropractor's office, fully knowing that I didn't have the money to pay her. And she donated her time for the next, 3 to 6 months in my office to help me out, running my office, getting things, working smoother, and, kind of getting things up on track and working for me. For free, no charge ever. She said, no, I want to do this for you. You changed my life. What is that worth? We're talking about fighting for a $5 copay and somebody who's literally willing to quit their job, their livelihood, and donate their time, whatever that's worth, for months of their time. And we're fighting about whether a patient's going to be able to pay for a little bit of care out of their pocket to get some amazing results. The comparison's not even there when you use, a story like that, just to kind of drive that point home just a little bit for you. Session 5, really fun one. Another movie quote, "May the force be with you." So when we're talking about the force, now we're going to bring in that energy component of things, that mental, emotional, spiritual energy side of the triangle that we had drawn up here. So, in large part, this session is very heavy on the acupuncture side, dealing with the energy systems of the body. We talk about acupuncture being around and withstanding the test of time over the last 5,000 years. Something that has real efficacy and can withstand 5,000 years means that there's a lot of clinical efficacy there. And that's why of all of the holistic things that are out there and available, it's actually one of the most well accepted, even in the clinical setting of a hospital. Some very intense integrations there taking place from that holistic acupuncture world into the medical model. So, profound there. However, at the same time, I've had number of people that have been in the field as an acupuncturist taking the course, and I've also had, now that New York Chiropractic College actually has their acupuncture program as well, there's students that are just doing the acupuncture program and students that are doing the dual degree with the chiropractic and the acupuncture. All of that put together, especially acupuncturists who have been in the field for a long period of time, that even just finishing this one session, feeling like it just exploded and saved them 20, 30 years worth of continually working on mastering acupuncture and saving them decades of work and being able to get results with acupuncture in a much more streamlined, efficient way. So really exciting there. I have another great story that goes along with that with a patient of mine. She was a 14 or 15-year-old female. Parents brought her in at multiple times in tears, literally watching their daughter dying in front of them. So right now, as I'm recording this, it's October, and it's actually about this time of year that they come in. And they said over the last, so we're September, August, July, sometime in June. So we're talking about 4 months previously. Something happened, something changed, and she lost her appetite completely, couldn't stomach food in any way whatsoever, and her body weight kept going down and down and down. I mean, you talk about pictures that you've seen with, from Ethiopia and the starvation and hunger, like she was looking really, really bad. She wasn't very big to begin with, and traumatic because they're watching their daughter, dwindle away to nothing. Have gone through the medical route, tried every test, isn't showing anything, which is again another issue with the standard of care. Standard testing a lot of times comes back completely normal. Take blood work. Your blood work, your blood and the systems in your body, you got 13 different buffer systems that are meant to keep your blood work as normal and as perfect as possible. All right? Which means most of the time when you get blood work, things are going to look normal unless they're really, really bad. As an example, your liver needs to be so sick and so diseased that cells are literally dying, breaking open. Their contents are now in the blood, and you can measure liver enzymes. Maybe not the time that you want to find it in the blood. What if we could find information to that much sooner? I digress. Whole nother subject dealing with testing, but all of the standard tests that were being done, GI docs, neurology docs, everything coming back normal and not knowing what to do. So, created a bit of a reputation in town for helping some of the most difficult cases. They end up in my office. And like so many cases, I won't even leave the consultation room until I have an idea of where we're even going to get started. And didn't make sense that this particular patient was 15 years into life without any problems, and then all of a sudden, the previous June, all of a sudden things started falling apart. Wasn't out of the country. All the testing for parasites and bacterial infections and things of that nature came back negative. And I kept going, but what changed? What changed? What changed? And nothing. They're racking their brains. We're trying to dig deep and figure things out. I'm racking my brain, and all right, this is going to sound off the wall, but I just got to ask because who knows? I said, do you remember really stubbing your toe really, really bad back in June? And they got thinking for a minute. And, you stub your toe really bad. It hurts sometimes for quite a bit of period of time, and you don't forget those things. And you're like, well, yeah, actually, I broke my toe in June. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Which one? And it happened to be her second toe in. And that's exactly where the stomach meridian travels to, is that second toe. It's like, now at least something makes sense. and I have something to go off of. And we were able to make some things turn around relatively quickly for her. And we're back on a path towards health and did really well, which is going to slip. We're almost there. We're talking about that one technique that is going to absolutely help everybody that comes into your door. We're going to get there. It's going to be awesome. But just another good example of, session 5 and why that can be so profound for somebody. Session 6, feelings buried alive never die. So we're talking about feelings, nothing more than feelings. A lot of emotional stuff. That whole side of the triangle where we're dealing with that mental, emotional, spiritual side, it's so overlooked with our patients' care. When you compound the physical, you compound the physiological stuff, the biochemistry going on in the body, and then all of the emotional side, the anxieties, the depressions, the frustrations, the fears, all of those different things that absolutely have their place and their impact in somebody's health. And if it's not being addressed, I promise you, whether it's a psychologist that you're sent to, a psychiatrist, or you're dealing with things on an emotional basis with a patient with a plethora of different emotional techniques that we have at our arsenal. And seeing some pretty significant things with that is really a lot of fun. I do know applied kinesiology docs in practice using only the emotional techniques. They have a very emotionally based practice and see absolutely amazing results just by using this one session and forgetting all of the other 8 sessions. It can be that profound and build $1 million practice just off of dealing with emotional stuff. There's a lot of stress and anxiety in the world. It's one of the top drugs sold these days is depression and anxiety meds. If you have, that interest at all, this is definitely a course that can go a very, very long way there. So, a couple other things that we do cover and touch on in there as well is a lot of work with the TMJ and teeth-related issues, and that brings up a great case that actually took place at a live session teaching session 6, feelings buried alive never die. So I asked for a volunteer, like I do a lot of times, bring them up and can start doing some different demonstration. I am about to do a technique that I literally only have one slide on. It's a very quick, easy technique to teach. Not something that I had used a whole lot in practice. And it's supposed to be pretty clean cut. We're going to get through this in 5 minutes, and life's going to be good. And patient comes up, student comes up. I start trying to test some things, and every single muscle in the body is completely weak. And I'm like, what is going on with you? This is crazy. Starts getting into a little bit of a history. Well, about a year prior, she was hit in the head with an anvil. And the whole class kind of is like, hit in the head with an anvil? Like, is this a Wile E. Coyote cartoon? Like, how does that even possibly happen? How do you get hit in the head with an anvil? But, that's going through her case. And because of getting hit in the head with an anvil, she had tremendous neurologic deficits that she had to relearn how to walk, which was still very unsteady. Just a huge case history neurologically. It's like, okay, well, I wanted to just show something in 2 minutes, but let's see what else we could do here. So we started going through some neurologic testing, very standard things, a lot of cerebellar testing, different lobes of the brain, trying to see what's going on. And I said, let's try to go back to the tooth technique that we're going to be using called neurologic tooth. And I was able to find a flexor digiti minimi that was strong that I was able to test. So we went through that. There were 3 different teeth that this particular technique had uncovered and did the fix with this particular technique. And she got up, and the whole class is watching this take place. They see her standing there and bobbling all over the place. She can't touch her nose, her fingers all over the place. I mean, we're talking major neurologic deficits. Whole class could see. There's no, it's close. These are major neurologic things that are showing up. And she stands right up and does every one of those tests like there was nothing wrong ever, spot on, doing things great. And I'm just thinking in the back of my mind, holy crap, this is amazing stuff. As the professor in class, I'm like, well, that's what I expected. Um, Everybody, their jaws on the floor. They're like, this is the most amazing thing that they've ever seen. One of the most amazing things I've ever seen. And it happened to be in a really great place, being in front of a classroom like that. To this day, several of the students in that class were in contact with each other, and we still talk about how amazing that was. And even make it more fun was I was teaching that in Florida. The very next week, and I'm telling the story, had another just as profound impact with the exact same technique on somebody else in front of the room, which was just really, really funny, and it deserved way more than one slide on my PowerPoint. So we do spend a little bit more time on that now, interestingly enough. So, point being, tremendous session to learn a lot of information, and that's really going to have some profound impacts with our patients. Moving on, session 7, hot and heavy. There's a lot of different underlying tones with hot and heavy. Hot referring to menopause and hot flashes. Hot and heavy meaning getting a little hot and heavy under the covers. The endocrine session, where we're going to get into a lot of our hormonal type issues. And heavy, obviously part of the hormones and that metabolic side between the thyroid and the pancreas, and dealing with a lot of metabolic type issues as well. So we're going to look at things like PMS and menopause and infertility issues and weight loss problems, adrenal issues, diabetic issues, and how we can have the biggest impact in a lot of those patients' lives. Really, one of my favorite of all of the sessions for sure. We joke about it sometimes in practice, where you have a female, for whatever reason that it was decided, whether it was for heavy bleeding purposes, that she got put on the pill and was on it for 15 or 20 years before getting married and wanting to start a family, or if it was for birth control purposes, or both. But these women that are coming in, having been on birth control for 20 years and then wanting to get pregnant and wondering why they can't get pregnant. Like, well, you kind of shut that system down for a pretty long period of time. And, so the joke is now how many women I've gotten pregnant, and my wife kind of chuckles a little bit, and everybody gets a laugh out of it. But point being is that there's such a profound impact that we can have on our patients that you don't necessarily need to start megadosing hormones to try to counteract what's going on with the body. Another great story that goes along with that is you use, it's called Pottinger's Cats. It's a book. They made a video documentary about all of this. Dr. Pottinger was a second-generation endocrinologist. He was continuing a lot of his father's work, and this dates back to the 1930s and 40s. And they ended up having tons and tons of cats, not enough food even to feed all of them properly. So instead of the normal food that they were giving, they started feeding a group of them. They just got raw scraps from the meat place down the street, and started noticing some very profound differences. So their endocrine work turned into following these, a lot of offshoots, but two major groups of cats. Ones that had more processed, refined type of a diet, and another that had more of a raw food type of a diet. And what they found was that the more processed and refined group, next generation, they started, the bones were more brittle. They diagnosed the first case of asthma in a cat ever. And as they got to third generation, their bones were incredibly brittle, multiple fractures upon birth. The reflexes were very slow. Normally if you drop a cat, they should be able to land on all four paws, very agile. They're kind of landing on their sides. They've got no real balance and coordination. And when they got to fourth generation, if they could get them to mate, which they had no libido and it was very, very difficult in the first place, but if they got them to mate, any births were all stillbirths, every single one of them. They could never get a live fourth generation. Interesting. Especially when you take a look at and try to make a leap in a parallel with my generation and some earlier generations, and the kind of problems, since we've been so heavily refining and processing foods, getting to our fourth and fifth generations now, and just how profound of a problem these days women are having with infertility, men and women having with infertility. I'm not saying there's direct causal links. I'm not saying anything, but it's just interesting points to think about, and then also, things can certainly be addressed as well. So great session, a lot of fun information there, and let's see, session 8. Didn't know exactly what to call this one, but I called it No Guts, No Glory. Why guts? Because we're talking about the visceral system now. We're talking about visceral conditions dealing with the ileocecal valve, the large intestine, the small intestine. We're dealing with diarrhea and acid reflux. We're dealing with detox in the liver, the cardiovascular system in the heart, more visceral type of conditions and the kind of impacts that we could have on those particular patients. Which now brings me up to the continuation of the story with the OBGYN referring my first patient from her, and with all of the vaginal discharge and pain that this patient was having. And I'm talking to the patient, I'm trying to give myself a little bit of, it's been 2 years with really strong drugs. If we're going to really get on the same page, like, you got to give me 4 to 6 months and, see if we can get this thing to turn around, just to give myself a little bit of leeway and no unrealistic expectations. Anyway, long story short is she called me up 3 days after her first visit, and 80% of her pain was gone. And within 2 weeks, it was all cleared up, no discharge, no pain, and very, very happy individual. That's awesome. That's life-changing, and let me tell you how happy this woman was. That's marriage-saving. That's quality of life-saving in every possible way. And you better believe somebody's willing to pay good money to have results like that. So, and actually, your average kindergartner should have been able to figure out that case. Keep in mind, I'm kind of racking my brain trying to figure out what's going on, but on my extensive intake form that takes a lot of people sometimes 2 or 3 hours to fill out, got to dig as deep as we possibly can. One of the questions, a lot of questions actually, about their bowel movements, how often, what it looks like, what it smells like. We're poop talk. Fun talk for any guy. Something that we have to get into a lot of depth with a lot of different patients. So, it's like pretty consistent. It's like, I've learned to ask, well, what does that mean for you? It's like about every 10 to 14 days. And I just, inside, just couldn't even contain myself and just could feel this explosion in my head going on. Every 10 to 14 days, like every kindergartner in the world knows that you're supposed to poop every day. Did the doctor know? Yeah. What'd they do? Wrote it in the notes. Whew. Okay, let's take a step back. Is it possible that a function of excretion not working well is going to find another way of excreting, can cross an incredibly thin membrane and try to go out the next best orifice that's even there? Maybe if we fix excretion the way that it was meant to go, that maybe things would start clearing up. Improving function. And in this case, it was a grand slam. He cleared that up much more quickly than I even thought, which brings up a great point of not having expectations, because sometimes your expectations of 6 months happens in 2 days, or something that you think is going to be 2 minutes ends up being a several week or a couple month grind, but ultimately getting some results along the way. I digress. Point being is that every single one of these sessions can have major and profound impacts covering just about every facet of healthcare. I've done it time after time. A lot of the docs that graduate from this coursework are seeing prolific changes with the results that they have, both with their patients, in their quality of their own life and practice, their own health benefits, and the financial repercussions of actually being able to charge cash and having that quality of life as well. So phenomenal. So again, I want you to think for a second now, all the money that I've spent on these seminars, taking the applied kinesiology seminars all the way through the 100-hour course, probably 8 or 9 different times, before I even became a diplomate and started teaching myself. All of the dozen times that I've been to the national or international meetings where there's all of the best AK docs, medical doctors, DOs, chiropractors coming together and teaching over a 4 or 5 day period all around the world the best of the information that they have to add to the knowledge year after year after year. And then you add in all of the countless neurology courses, all of the soft tissue courses, all of the business management courses. And we didn't even get into, from the search engine optimization side, the $100,000 that my buddy and I spent learning from the best of the world in that area. So now you've got the perfect marriage of clinical skill and running a business, and marrying those two, because either by themselves, you're going to have some major problems. Either you have amazing clinical skill and you have no idea how to get patients in the office, how to run an office, and how to make money, and you go broke and you can't even use your amazing clinical skill. If you go the other way, you're a marketing genius, you get all these people to come in your office and you can't help any of them. You're going to have 10,000 bad reviews. Nobody's going to want to come in and see a doctor like that. You're just a good marketer. That's not what we want either. We want a perfect blend and a marriage of those two things coming together so that you can really live the life that you want and have the impact on the world ultimately that we want. So, what does that all mean? Ultimately, is an investment like that. What is that going to mean to you? To be able to have that kind of clinical knowledge where you take all of that, chunk it down in a way that you can apply it now, early in school, have all of that expertise, and save yourselves literally decades of time not having to spend that kind of money and that kind of time investing, where I can put all that together for you. Tremendous benefit there. I've got some amazing bonuses for you. Couple of things to consider too is a lifetime video vault where the entire coursework is available by video, so that not only doing it live in class, but so that you can continue studying and mastering and get the repetition, that you have access to it. You forget something, what did I say? How do you do this? You have instant access to it online for a lifetime. And as the body of knowledge is growing, you continue to have access to that information as well. The SEO course, because of all of the study that I've done, actually ended up being for my own benefit. I needed to also make it condensed and systematized so I could use all of this knowledge. So I ended up creating a course. I first sold it for $1,000. Then I kind of settled at about $500 for the course, but I'm throwing that in there for you too, because I think it's that important to not go broke and to build the profession, and to be able to have that online presence as well. That's a bonus being thrown in when you decide to take the entirety of the AAK course. You're going to get a free strategy session with me, which it could be about practice, it could be about school, it could be about anything clinically related. That's going to be a huge bonus for you. I have a Facebook community of over 400 doctors now, of docs who have taken my coursework. And now if you've got a difficult case and you're still not sure what to do, or you want some other input, you can consult with 400 doctors that really know their stuff and specialize in certain areas. And now you've got that clinical expertise right in Facebook in the group. It's a closed group, and you get access to that for a lifetime. The nutrition course that I wrote was a 100-hour course just in nutrition. And the first session of it, all of the docs in attendance, it had the single greatest increase in doctors' offices' income purchasing from the company that company had ever seen from any other lecturer that had ever taken place. The average increase was a 25% increase in nutrition sales for each of those offices, which is a profound increase after a one-day seminar. That's being thrown in for you, no extra charge. Major bonus there. So just as an example, if you were making $100,000 a year in nutrition sales, bump that up to $125,000 based on those statistics that was brought to me from the rep from that particular company, and the kind of an impact that had on their clinical capabilities, their ability to help more and more patients, and the ability to use a lot more nutritional products, knowing how to use them, when to use them, and how to get the results. You get access to that. Both will be covering some of that information in class, but the entire course on video, you have that as a bonus as well when you take the entirety of the course. A lot of repetition and mastery involved with it. You have an opportunity, not for everybody, but a lot of students, because I am adjunct faculty at New York Chiropractic College and Palmer Chiropractic College in Florida. I've had several students from both that during their last semester, during their preceptorship, come to my office and be able to treat with me hands-on for an entire semester, learning a lot more in-depth hands-on work. I'd venture to call that priceless with, the kind of hands-on training with that. I don't know that there's really a price tag that you can put on something like that, but that certainly is available to students along the way. I can only have 1 to 3 at a time that could possibly do something like that, but huge bonus when people do want to take advantage of it. You're also going to get an opportunity as a bonus to see some of the most advanced technology in the healing world today. Again, it didn't matter knowledge-wise what the cost was to a seminar. I'm going, I'm learning, I'm studying, and going to dive in head first. Also, from a technology standpoint, what's going to be most beneficial for my patients and get the best results. I've tried, bought, and utilized just about everything that's been out there these days, and there's some very impressive stuff that a lot of it you'll be able to use hands-on during the seminar. For the New York folks, my office is right down the street, so you're going to be able to come to the office and see it firsthand. For the Florida folks, some of it can make its way there. There is going to be some, reps being able to demonstrate some of it that I can't necessarily ship my equipment, but you're going to get as much exposure as I possibly can. I've also teamed up with several different companies that do a lot of very in-depth diagnostic testing, genetic testing, that's going to be available for you. It's not free in every instance. I'm trying to work on a few of those, but you're going to have access to severely discounted prices so that from session 1 through session 8, over that 8-month period of time, that we not just increase your clinical skills and knowledge, but we also take your health to the next stratosphere as well, so that you can be, like one of my mentors calls it, living proof, that you are literally living the proof of how this lifestyle and this knowledge is actually going to have that impact. When you're vibrant with energy and health, your ability to, in a hypocritical type of a way, be able to transfer that type of a health onto your patients. If you're 500 pounds overweight and you're having discussions with your patients about weight loss, that's a difficult discussion to make at that point. Not impossible, but especially if you're showing your improvements and you're following the same thing, at least there's some clinical proof that what you know and what you're doing is going to work. But point being, over that 8-month period of time, wherever your health is, if it's good, we're going to try to make it great. If it's lousy, we're still going to try to make it as great and as exceptional as possible. Largely, one of the biggest gifts that I could give to you is that we're not going to be no longer providing the standard of care, which is what the insurance companies are, touting that you provide is the standard of care. I don't provide the standard of care. I think the standard of care is crap. I only offer exceptional care to my patients, and they pay for that. So if you want to be a standard of care person, that's a choice. If you want to deliver exceptional care, that's a choice, and you've got a clear road to add to your capabilities of doing that in a very significant way. So a lot of fun there. Almost wrapping it up, but I had to debate the price of this course 1,001 different times. I've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars accumulating the knowledge and the travel and everything that's been involved with getting to where I am now. And that's not in a place, it's in a humble place, because my true passion is to be able to do one of two things. I want to help as many people as I can, and the cost is not something that I concern myself with. It's first and foremost what's best for the quality of the patient, for their care and the results that they get. The other major thing is I have an incredible passion for teaching. I love it, and I know that my passion for helping people is now expanded exponentially when I could help 100 or 200 or 1,000 doctors, and then their ripple effect that they have on all of their patients as well. The impact is just that much greater. I love teaching. It's fun. And I would argue, this great ability to take complex information and make it really simple to understand, very easy to use. And, that's not always the easiest thing for somebody to be able to do. Great example, I had this organic chemistry professor in undergrad. Brilliant, almost too brilliant for his own good, but he didn't remember what it was like to be in day one of organic chemistry. And, you had to go read the textbook to even understand what he's talking about. And a big disconnect. That's what I've heard back from more students than anything, is the ability. Is like, wow, they were talking about this in school and I couldn't follow any of it. And this is so easy. Why don't they teach it like this? It's like, I don't know, but here you go. Now you can use this information for the rest of your life and help a lot of people. So again, I paid tens of thousands. I can't really charge $100,000 for a course like I could. The value is there. Technically the value of this is priceless, in the sense that you will make millions of dollars over the course of your lifetime in practice by utilizing this information. So is it worth $100,000? In my mind, absolutely. I already did. I have spent that money. I've proved that the information itself is absolutely worth that kind of money. But not charging that much. Could I give it away for free? I don't think that would be of benefit either. In the same way, giving away care to your patients for free, it's kind of taken advantage of. It's not really, they don't, if it's free, they might not do their at-home care. They might not do this, or really, they drop off and whatever. It was free. It doesn't matter so much. Same kind of thing happens here. So I can't just give this away. As much as I would love to, get some amazing $10 million grant and just only focus on teaching, all doctors from every profession, and, have money be a zero issue. It's just that important. I'd love something like that. But again, not in a position to be able to make that a free scenario for everybody as well. Anyway, as I was kind of thinking about all those things, the real price, there's a couple of different price points. For students, it's $1,500 to take the course. For doctors, it's $2,000 to take the entire course. And you can break it down into individual sessions. It's a little bit more expensive if you pay by session. It is doable. But I want you to think again now, not from the poverty complex that we talked about, but think about it in what it costs per patient. Even at the doctor price of $2,000, my average case fee for one patient is more than the cost of this program for the $2,000. I'd say the average is somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 for a case fee that would come into the office. So for less than the cost of one patient, you get all of those bonuses and all of that knowledge from those sessions for a lifetime, and access to the Facebook group and all of the consulting that you can do with those hundreds of doctors, which are going to be continually growing as well. That's a real return on investment, especially when it's very clear that the kind of money that could be generated from this is significant and a very high quality of life that goes along with it. So we're going to summarize real quick. In a nutshell, one, to get out of the chiropractic rat race, don't rely on insurances. We talked about that. Having multiple sources of income, which we're going to add to the ways and streams of income in a significant way that you're going to be able to monetize. Getting paid today and not waiting months or even longer to be able to get paid. And getting out of the rat race. The quality of life that you wanted, and actually helping the people that you intended to and wanted to help in the first place. And really just making that your sole focus is really exciting. Again, you get your bonuses. You get the lifetime Video Vault access, the entire SEO courses thrown in, free strategy session with me, the community Facebook group, the nutrition course that increases nutrition practices by 25%. You get all of the opportunity to come to my office in your last trimester of school. You get to see the most advanced technology in the entire world being used, how to use it, and what it's used for, what I've seen that works and doesn't work. Huge benefit, so you're not wasting more tens of thousands of dollars on equipment that hasn't really worked and lived up to its marketing hype. And ultimately ending up healthier 8 months later because of all of the healthy things that we're going to be adding to your life, all the different testing and lifestyle things and treatment that you'll get along with the course as well. Just by itself, that one thing is priceless and worth its weight in gold. So you get all of those things. You're going to get all 8 sessions and all of the profound impact and information that you're going to get there. Ultimately, the course is held in 2 different locations, but I have to cap the amount of people because I want to make sure that this is the highest quality hands-on seminar. I want to be able to give people the individuality that they can. I do have some people helping me that are diplomates in applied kinesiology as well, or have been taking this course for years and know a lot of this information, just haven't taken their diplomate exam yet. So, in both locations, in New York and in Florida, I have that available, but it still makes it limited on the amount of one-on-one or one-on-a-group capability. So I have to cap it. There's only going to be 50 people per location. And to put that into perspective, on club day at New York Chiropractic College, just from trimester 1, 43 people signed up for AK Club right then and there. So if all of those people turn around and actually take the applied kinesiology course, then I've only got room for 7 other people in that location. Don't wait around. The point is they're going to fill up, and I can only take a certain amount to be able to offer the quality that I want to be able to offer, because I don't just offer standard of care in practice. I offer exceptional care, and that carries over into the seminars as well. It's not just going to be a lot of filler and fluff and stuff that you can't use. I hold myself to the standard of exceptional care, exceptional teaching, and that's exactly every single time what I'm going to be delivering to you. And your feedback, session after session, what you need, what you want, what you need more clear, is going to turn into the next level of continuing to make it exceptional and getting the most out of it, for sure. So very, very important there, and I want you to keep that in mind. As far as successes, over the years, I've got a handful, 4 or 5 people that have gone on to get their diplomate. I have easily got another 5 to 10 people that are well on their road to getting their diplomate in applied kinesiology and truly mastering that information, which can be a lifetime of study. A survey I did among the diplomates, the average is that they're going to spend, even after they get their diplomate, they spend an average of 2 hours a day studying, because you find out very quickly, the more you learn and the more you know, the more difficult patient that comes in, and the more that you need to grow and expand and figure out ways to be able to get the responses that they're looking for. So, this is not a standard of care doctor model. This is holding yourself to the highest standards that there are. And, ask yourself, is this, what type of doctor do I want to go to? Personally, do I want to go to somebody that spends 2 minutes? Picture yourself having something kind of serious going on. Do I want to go in for a 2-minute visit after waiting for an hour and a half in the waiting room and get the same exact treatment that the last 3,000 people did? Or do you want something that's way more of a custom type of a care, way more time spent with you, a doctor diving deep, listening to you, and whether they know the answer right then and there, or they'll dive as deep as they possibly can and find you the answer. Who do you want to see? And if that's who you want to see, then there might be some moral and ethical implications in actually delivering that same kind of care yourself. So, with that, I do have one additional option of a payment plan. You have to call the office to get this. It is more expensive to do a payment plan. You could do $500 for a student times 4 payments. It's $2,000 versus paying $1,500 all up front. hopefully you see that there's benefit to paying for it in advance. You save a lot of money, and it's a good actual business thing to learn yourself, getting out of that poverty complex. But again, it's available. Funds are really tight. We have to figure out a way. We'll figure out a way. We'll get you there, and $500 a month is a lot more doable for some people than coming up with $1,500 all at once. Similar thing with the doctors. It's going to be $600 times 4 payments, so that comes to $2,400. So instead of $2,000, it's $2,400. It is more expensive, but you know that's the way it rolls. We do have payment options. We can figure this out. So you know, save money, do it all up front, do it in payment plans. There, you could do each class individually. A lot of different possibilities to go across the board. You know, try to figure out a way that we can make this work for everybody. But that being said, thank you so very much for sitting through this. And you know, I wanted to touch back for that one last critical pearl that you should take this home with you and never ever forget it. The one single thing that you could ever do for a patient that's going to help every single patient that walks in your door, it's profound. Don't ever forget this. It's what that patient needs. It's not what you need to give them. It's not, I only know how to adjust, so that's what they're getting. The care that they need individually is the care that needs to be provided. That's the most important technique. It's the most important technique for that person, for their individuality. Maybe not exactly what you were thinking, but every bit as profound, and highlights the fact that you need to take your clinical repertoire from 1 or 2 tools and add in 1,000 tool arsenal so that when the next patient comes in, you can provide them what they need and not just what you have to offer from what you learned in school, and not looking outside of the box of that. That in and of itself, hopefully a lot of the information here you will see, whether you see it now or over the next couple decades, how priceless a lot of this information is, and that you will literally save decades and tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars if you watch this over and over and over again and really take to heart a lot of the information that's taught. With that, thank you so very much for listening. My passion is here to help you. If I can help in any possible way, I am here to be able to help, answer your questions. You can email me. You can call the office. We can rock and roll and be able to really change the world in a profound way. Thank you so very much. My name is Dr. Chris Montanaro. You can reach me at drchrisseminars.com. You can also join the AK Club, which is akclub.drchrisseminars.com. All my contact information is there. Tons of great information. You can sign up for the course right there. And I'll look forward to seeing you in class. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.